Welcome to Pantisocracy, and this is your host, Miss Panty Bliss.
Well, hello and welcome to my Christmas Pantisocracy crib. I've trimmed the tree, I've iced the cake, and I've even got the mistletoe over the door. Though, of course, this is not my door. For this evening, I've borrowed Jimmy Joyce's crib as we've set up court in the gorgeous James Joyce Centre in inner city Dublin, where I have this fabulous Georgian mansion to play house in. And tonight, I've gathered a lovely set of folk around me, 2 singers and musicians, a storyteller, an actor. Sounds like a perfectly formed seasonal session if you ask me. So, first up, in these strange 2020 COVID times, it is always handy if 2 of your guests are married to each other, because it means they can actually sit next to each other on the sofa. So, over here on the sofa, possibly even touching, and direct from Dingle, we've the beautiful Muireann Nic Amhlaoibh, singer, broadcaster, sea swimmer, and her husband, folklorist, humanist, and lover of all things ancient and buried. And that is not a dig at his lovely wife. He's into archaeology. It's Billy McGlynn. Or should I say Dr. Billy McGlynn. So please welcome Muireann and Billy. Yay! And then way over there, at least 2 meters away, we've a young woman of song and story, Maja Sofia. She's from Galway, Headford, with a Finnish first name from the Finnish granny and a little bit of Eastern from her Turkish Cypriot granddad. She says she's a feminist shaped by being a young queer woman growing up in a very Catholic place, and I have driven through Headford on many a time, so I can confirm that it is indeed a very Catholic place. Welcome, Maja. Yay! Thanks for coming, Maja. And next to Maja, at least 2 meters away, is a Cavan man whose many voices on stage stretch from the devious Richard III to the devious Scrooge. It's the actor and director Éireann Monaghan, whose Hollywood credits include Assassin's Creed, The Foreigner, but he may also be the only guy to take the lead role in an opera, the second violinist, while never actually singing. Please welcome Éireann Monaghan. And so, our gathering here by the comfort of a winter fire, by the lights of the Christmas tree, is all about solace and what it means to us. And without even mentioning the P or the C words that have dominated this year, it has been a strange year of trouble and grief. So what's got us through it? And where, in the midst of only virtual hugs and takeaway pints, have we found our joy? But given that it's our way and it's our want, I am going to get things started with a few words of my own. I have a dog and a cat. The dog, Penny, is a 13-year-old Jack Russell with dodgy hips, a little late life weight, and a snore that at some point along the way went from annoying to reassuring. She's been with me for 12 years. She was a rescue who didn't have a good start in life. And when we first got together, she was basically a ball of defense mechanisms held together by fur and sinew. And it took years for her to settle into her skin. But her bad start left a permanent mark in character traits that I quietly admire in her. She's quirky, timid, but she's also stoically aloof, regally disinterested. She likes me, we have our thing, but you? No, she has no interest in you or your life or what you do for a living or your needy attempts to pet her or your pathetic attempts to ingratiate yourself with her by offering treats that she never even asked for. Your obsequious platitudes will be met by a steady gaze that says, "You're blocking my view of the telly." God, I love her. She's everything I want to be when I grow up. The cat, however, couldn't be more different. Crayon, for that's his name, is an absolute whore for attention. And he's a demanding whore, wanting the attention and wanting it always on his terms, when and where and how he likes it. While Penny is esoteric, cerebral, always in her head, the cat is utterly carnal and completely of the flesh. They shouldn't get on, but they do. Crayon throws himself onto you, pushing himself into you, kneading, curling, stretching, rolling on and over you without the slightest inhibition or remotest concern for what you may be doing at the time. He delights in his selfishness. I may think that I'm busy doing important work on the laptop, but he knows I'm doing nothing of any importance and neglecting the only thing that matters, his desire for carnal pleasure. And he'll tell me so by slinking low across my keyboard and determinedly pushing his warm, adorable head into my palms to remind me of my only purpose in life. He's absolutely shameless. God, I love him. He's everything I want to be when I grow up. During the first lockdown, I took great solace in Penny. The situation was worrying. I make my living from two sectors that weren't just affected by COVID, they were simply ended by COVID. The bar I'd poured my heart and soul into for 13 years, my other home, was shuttered and sat there dark, empty, silent, gathering dust. And my shows, performing, the things that give me life, well, there were no shows. Shows need audiences, and audiences were ended. The things that gave my life shape and purpose, the things that gave it a rhythm, were ended out of the blue, overnight, without warning, by an invisible foe, so new it had the word novel in its name. And all of it completely outside of my control. This wasn't my first epidemic. But I took solace in Penny. She was my spirit guide, my lockdown spirit animal. We took long walks on which I took the lead, but otherwise, I followed hers and rose above it. I baked, I made wigs, I organised the feckin' wardrobe finally. I watched series I'd always meant to watch but never had the time. Now I had the time and I filled it and rose above the continuous gnawing background hum of worry about the bar, the mortgage, the future. Like Penny, I took an attitude of regal aloofness, a studied disinterest towards this microscopic invader, this thing that would soon be over. Penny and I strolled in the spring sunshine, and when we had to look at this novel virus, we fixed it with a steady gaze and said, "You're blocking my view of the telly." But it wasn't over soon. It lingered and lasted long enough to lose the moniker novel. Lockdown ended, but it didn't feel like that to me. There was still nothing for me to go back to. My old life was still shuttered, still empty, still silent. No bars, no stages, no audiences. No light at the end of the tunnel. And the longer the tunnel stretched out before me, the harder it became to be Penny. The harder it became to remain regally aloof. The constant hum of worry grew louder and more insistent, and I struggled more and more with the feeling that it was all completely and utterly beyond my control. I was bobbing about in the broiling water, completely useless, while the Titanic, holed by an iceberg so small it was invisible to the naked eye, sank slowly before my eyes, with Dr. Tony Holan holding his daily briefing on its deck. And for a while, during the second lockdown, I couldn't rise above it anymore. I sank. I sank into my bed and I stayed there. I didn't get up again for a while. I mostly slept. But 2 warm little paws and 10 little needles kneading my neck woke me up. Crayon pushing his head in under my chin, rubbing hard, curling into my heat, stretching his soft, furry legs across my face, and his rumbling purr as insistent as any worry, luxuriating in his little body, embracing pleasure, totally and utterly in the moment, completely in the now. Crayon has no future, only a present, and he is always totally present in his present. Penny is complicated, but Crayon is a man of simple pleasures. And in second lockdown, I needed simple pleasures. Crayon would be my second lockdown spirit animal. And I took great solace in Crayon. I got out of bed and made pancakes and ate them with a sinful amount of maple syrup and then shoved a few squares of dairy milk into a bit of French bread and sat on the sofa between the cat and the dog and watched Princess Diana get done over by and in The Crown. And there was nothing blocking our view of the telly. Thank you. Thanks for being here. So, solace. Muireann, I'm going to start with you. What does give you solace?
Listening to that there, I mean, I definitely took to the bed a lot, especially during the first lockdown. I think the second lockdown wasn't as difficult because, like you, I figured out how to continue in a different way. So it wasn't quite as devastating. I learned how to use all the technology, probably not to a very high standard, but certainly we'd all figured out ways of continuing and adapting. So I've gotten there, but without music, without the stunning place that we live in, I mean, that was one of the things that kind of...
Because you guys are in Dingle.
We live in the tip of the Dingle Peninsula, and it's hard to wake up looking at that and feel sorry for yourself, to be honest with you. So once I got a bit of perspective about things, we were all right.
And you go sea swimming down there.
I do. I've been trying to go every day because if I miss a day, God, it just starts to get harder to get back in, especially in the wintertime. And then there's this guilt thing if you miss a day.
Because one of our other guests over here, Maya, we just discovered in the little chat before we got started, you're also a sea swimmer.
I am, yeah. It's been less since I've been back in Dublin, and I haven't gone in at least in over a week now, which the guilt is setting in. And the longer you leave it, the harder it is to get back in. But it is like the greatest gift in my life, I think, now.
And how long have you both been doing the sea swimming? It's become so popular now, hasn't it?
Well, there's nothing else to do. So I think, you just, there it is, the ocean, might as well get into it, I suppose. But for me, it's a reset button. It's like, when someone's in hysterics and they get a slap in the face. That, every day, which I need. So, I don't stay in really long. I'm not like super fit or anything like that. It's more the shock and the buzz you get off that.
And how long have you been doing it, Miriam?
I've been swimming all my life, really, but I've only been doing it through the winter for the last 2 years.
Okay. And Maya, it's more recent for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, also have been swimming all my life, but it's literally just been this year that, like, if you told me last year I'd be getting in the sea with no wetsuit in December, I would have, like, no way. But it's this shock. It's kind of like I keep joking that it's like I'm giving myself electroshock therapy and it's like an antidepressant, but it's kind of not really a joke as well.
Well, I mean, I am a big swimmer. All my life, I consider myself as a water baby. It's one of the few things that I will just confidently say, yes, I'm a good swimmer. But I am not getting into the bloody Irish Sea on December 25th or whatever. And my sister does it, but...
You're a professional.
No, I just love the water. I love the quality of lifelessness and being in another world and all. And you don't get that when you jump into the ice for 20 seconds and run out screaming. It's a different experience.
Well, I think the Atlantic is actually a little bit warmer than the Irish Sea.
That's true, a smidgen.
Yeah.
And now, Billy, you're sitting here beside your lovely wife. You don't do the sea swimming, do you?
Oh, no.
What do you get your solace out of?
Well, the thing that gives me tremendous solace is collective joy. This notion that coming together in celebration or pulling together with a common cause of some kind.
Yeah.
I knew that this was an important thing in my life, and it's something I've devoted a lot of my life to through ceremonies, doing humanist ceremonies, weddings and funerals, and but also the kind of ceremonies that we put on in the summer at festivals and things like that. And I knew that it was important, but I didn't realize what kind of an effect it has on you until I was without it.
Well, Billy, people might be shocked to find out that we actually researched this show, but we do. And in looking at things you've done before, it really resonated with us. And I found myself constantly thinking about this all week. And I think you encapsulated for me what it was that I hadn't quite put my finger on about what I hate about this year. Yeah. Aaron, what do you find your joy in?
Parks and running and walking and listening to your monologue. Yeah, we got a dog this year.
A lot of people got a pet this year.
Yeah, lockdown pets. But yeah, that's changed our lives completely. Changed our home forever.
You slipped in the wee there because you're 4 years married.
That's right.
To the lovely Claire Monolly, which I learned from you earlier is actually a Mayo name, and I'm like, not as far as I never heard Monolly before. And so you got a dog yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like we're in suburbia. Claire was walking around last night and she said she saw Christmas decorations on a house, and she said, I don't know if they were up last year. And then she thought about it and she said, actually, I never came down to the end of this street last year. This year we've just explored our area.
Yeah.
And never realised that we had these 3 incredibly unique, beautiful parks that we've discovered and spent time in this year.
Yes. You, as an actor, and that and you've been traveling a lot the last few years. So, in the first 3 or 4 years of your marriage, you didn't get to spend that much time with Claire.
Well, we got married in the middle of a tour. I was on a 9-month tour of a show, so I come home for 3 weeks over Christmas, and we got married. She came off to New York for a couple of weeks. That was her honeymoon. And then I went off on tour for another 3 months. So this year has been the first year we've spent the most amount of time together since we got married, because we've been working from home. So it's the first time that we spent the same amount of time in the same country. It's funny hearing Muireann say that we've all adapted. You know, the gym is my place where the head just kind of goes quiet and you can just listen to music and zone out and kind of connect with the body. And because they've been closed this year, I found that really hard to adjust. But you do find a way of evolving. So walking for me, which last year, just the idea of walking just seemed so boring, or running seemed like such an effort. And this year I've got addicted to it. You know, if you don't get out, and the dog's great for that, because the dog wants to be walked 4 or 5 times a day and wants to sniff everywhere, explore every nook and cranny of every park.
I always say about a dog, the best and the worst thing about having a dog is you have to take it for a walk every day.
It does. I love the fact that you said that there's no future in a dog. The dog just wants to play now.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
And now, Maya, apart from sea swimming, what else?
Likewise, just being in my body, like feeling ways to connect in my body in general. Like I've really gotten into dancing. The one thing I miss most now is I'll never take for granted being able to go out dancing somewhere ever again. But I'm literally dancing in my room every day like a crazy teenager, like sticking on, like me and my housemate Hannah, we made a 24-hour playlist called Quarantine Bangers, and we just danced in the kitchen every single night. And it's so, you kind of have to like not be self-conscious and just be present in your body, I guess. And yeah.
Maya, this seems like a good moment then to have our first bit of music. And you're going to do it for us. Tell us a little bit about the song.
So this song is the first song on my album Bath Time.
It's called The Gold Shoes.
It's called The Gold Shoes. And it's about a real pair of shoes that I sadly no longer own. But it's about lots of other things too.
But the important thing is they were a real pair of shoes. Okay.
Float like solar dust into the sky when you're hydrogen low.
Thank you, Maya.
Beautiful.
Now, this is our sort of our Christmas special, and Billy here is a folklorist. And were there things that we've lost that were special about old Irish Christmases?
I suppose there's religious aspects to Christmas which are probably passing out of common beliefs now as well, and there's curious things, folk beliefs and stuff like that, which I don't know if people actually believe them as much as they spoke about them, but things like saying that the animals could speak in the stall outside at midnight on Christmas Eve and things like that. They're nice poetic ways of thinking about it and symbolic ways of adding a kind of magic to Christmas. So human culture does that all the time. We add these layers and depths of meaning, which are sometimes symbolic, sometimes people believe them on some level.
Because before Christmas, we had a solstice festival anyway.
It's hard to know. I think the solstice was a very important time, but I think there's a symbolic significance to that, which is probably universal. Most cultures in the darkest depths of winter have these images of light. They have these images of positivity, fire, new life, resurrection of all different kinds. Yeah. The poetry of Newgrange is the idea of death and life. We imagine, we don't know exactly what it was, but these are human universals. And Christmas probably took over a lot of that, the promise of things to come and the positive message in that. And in a post-Christian world that a lot of people live in now, we still hold on to these symbols. We still light candles. We have Christmas trees. Even singing, caroling, all of that kind of stuff. These still hold tremendous weight for people because we need that sense of hope. We need that sense of life and that life affirmation in our darkest times.
Yeah. Well, now, not going back quite that far, Erin, tell me about your younger Christmas. Like, what were your childhood Christmases like? What's Christmas to you?
Oh, gosh, candles in the window, real candles, not electric ones. And
I do like an electric Sacred Heart, I have to say.
oh, the flickering one.
Yeah,
of
I
those
do. I like
is
those.
pretty
Kind of
fancy.
disco vibe off them, I think.
Lots and lots of music sessions, like trad sessions, special Christmas ones that go on that start in the afternoon.
Childhood Christmases were in Sheer,
Yes.
Cape Clear. But is your Christmas now any different than that?
No, I think we keep Christmas kind of simple. We're not hugely into presents, and especially nowadays, I just feel like we don't need any stuff.
Yeah.
Don't want any
How
more
do your kids
stuff.
feel about that?
They're dealing with it.
How old are they? There's two girls, right?
2 girls, 7 and 9. And no, they're great. They were so good during lockdown. They were just amazing because so much of lockdown was spent asking them to be quiet because Mama was recording or Dada was doing an online lecture or whatever. So they were really brilliant. And we're going to give them a great Christmas, but I kind of like the idea of giving them experiences and maybe one nice present. So yeah, Christmas is friends and music and light and
Well, in a way, like Christmas has the extra touch of magic when there are kids involved because they really believe in the magic of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Erin, you have a huge family and your parents fostered as well.
That's right, yeah.
So what were your childhood Christmases?
God, busy, noisy. And
How many brothers and sisters is there?
I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters biologically, and then there's a lot of foster kids who came through the house, and 2 of them stayed with us permanently. So they're just my sisters now. So they're in their 20s. So 9 of us all together, flung to the 4 corners of Ireland.
Your parents, that's a lot. They sound pretty special.
Yeah, Mum was just always used to raising kids, and Dad didn't put up too much resistance, I guess, But yeah, there's lots of grandkids now. I think at last count there was nearly 20. So the youngest of us is in our 20s. But you're seeing all the Christmas traditions coming back and repeating themselves now with the grandkids, which is kind of gorgeous, yeah.
But so what is Christmas to you?
I suppose it's changed over the years as you get older. When I was younger, I used to put a huge amount of pressure on the idea of Christmas, of going home and spending it with my mum, especially when my dad passed away, and kind of, just so much emphasis on being there, having a great Christmas. And I find sometimes Christmas can be quite overwhelming, actually, like emotionally. Yeah. There's an anxiety around it too, but also like the positivity and the kind of the goodness and the joy in it. I find that also very overwhelming. Like sometimes kind of hard to contain. Yeah, I do. But I am a little bit obsessed with the idea of Christmas Carol, but just the positive message in it. As I get older, I find that a little bit emotionally hard to take.
Do you think is that because you lost your father when you were quite young, 22, and it was around Christmas?
Yeah.
And you think is that why you feel emotionally vulnerable?
Possibly. Yeah, I'm sure. There's just you see so much good in people, and I suppose Christmas is about getting things and kind of like cozying up and settling down in front of warm fires for the winter, and you're always aware of the fact that a lot of people don't have that in this country, and I find that a lot, kind of hard to take. So in the last couple of years, I've kind of taken the pressure off myself in terms of Christmas. So my mum always says that Christmas doesn't always arrive on Christmas Day for her. So Christmas for her might be a moment where the grandkids are in the house 2 days before, or when there's 3 or 4 of her children who just happen to be there on the same day. She always goes, that's Christmas for me. And I'm finding the older I get, it's the same. So if myself and Claire go up and visit all my family and see all the kids a couple of days, that's Christmas for me. And
the magic moments.
And they are literally moments. But you cherish them a lot more. And as Miriam was saying, it's really not about gifts anymore. It's not about stuff. I think our house is about to crash if any more stuff comes into it.
And Maya, what's ahead for Christmas?
Well, very low key. Like my parents are separated, so I have a kind of like double Christmas Day sort of thing. I go to my mum's house usually on Christmas Day, and then my dad's house a few days later, and me and my sister do it all over again.
But what age were you when that happened? Had you had sort of the more traditional Christmas for a while?
Yeah. So that happened when I was in my late teens, actually. So we lived in a very small cottage, and it would just be my parents and my sister.
Because your parents were sort of hippies, weren't they?
They are hippies, God bless them, yeah.
Well, I have to say, myself and Helen, the producer, were laughing because you sort of said, oh, my dad was in a band, and she asked what band, and you said, oh, you probably don't know them, called the Big Geraniums. And we're like, of course we know the Big Geraniums. Like, I had a big crush on the little blonde fella.
Dara?
I don't know what his name was. I wasn't that big.
Oh, no, that could well have been my dad. He did it like blonde ringlets.
Was your dad the one who was always behind the waterfall of hair, playing the bass and never looked up?
He had incredible hair back then, I suppose, hiding his face. Yeah, that was my dad. Funny.
Well, you see, don't you do down your dad's past career by saying you probably won't know it. Well, so you grew up with music, and was that a big part of Christmas?
Yeah, music is just a huge priority in my house when I was growing up. And Christmas, definitely, we would have had sessions with the neighbours. We'd go over to like the neighbour's house, and everyone's singing songs till like, I don't know, dawn probably. It is cozy and nice. And yeah, my mum plays the fiddle and she sings as well. So it's just
you have like this Finnish grandmother.
Yeah.
And I think if you said to an Irish person, Finland, it seems like a perfect Christmas setting.
Well, I've actually never spent Christmas in Finland, but I would love to at some point. But I have spent Christmas in London, where my granny lives, a few times. Christmas Eve is the big day in Finland. So, I kind of had, I don't know, my Christmases have been a bit all over the place.
Well, I sort of like the way sometimes, every family has their own sort of individual traditions, and new ones appear and grow and all that. I like hearing about other people's, what's your weird family Christmas
weird,
tradition or whatever, Miriam, let's have some music.
Okay, yes.
And so what's the first song you're going to do, Riz?
This is a really, really ancient song, so Billy loves it. My dad has this joke, because Billy's an archaeologist as well, and my dad has this joke that it's great to be married to an archaeologist because the older I get, the more interesting I become to him. So anyway, this is a song called Daniha Uda Mehel, and it's from the 1500s, apparently. Possibly even earlier, who knows. And Daniha Uda Mehel means on that night in Bethlehem. Shall I go over there and do it?
Yes,
now? Okay.
please do.
weiden o julegrom. Laken lam het leven, gang laken naar is gone. Nor in us gilt hiel spirit, thought after a day fall. Kid Lord is the now, even ship was gone. Is fast the false Dar davin shikhar Nani haud imel Beg tager jegering gobran Nani haud imel Gadanigan virir slan Tager jaskra ispirav Sant halaf nach ludach ban Vergis gans ik levin Sen weiden o julegrom.
I love Niall Squeezebox. Now, Miriam, we heard briefly about Aaron's dad, and he passed away when Aaron was quite young, and Maya's dad, being a very famous bass player who had a number of pretty major hits in the early 90s. But Miriam, tell us about your dad, because your dad is also very interesting.
Well, my parents weren't hippies, but they were definitely alternative. Dad was originally a priest. He wasn't born a priest, obviously, but the first job he was a
Well, they
priest.
practically were at the time.
Yeah,
My uncle was sent to a
well,
seminary
yeah.
when he was 12 or something.
There you go. That's exactly the same, yeah. And then Mum was an actress, actually. And they met
Oh, this
doing
is a
play.
joke that writes itself.
They met, they were doing a play in the Abbey called Arla Hady, and Dad was playing fiddle for it.
He'd
and-
already left the priesthood. I think.
No!
He was a priest in a play.
Well, he was playing music for the play, and Mom was acting in it. And it was actually a play about the Blasket Islands. Which
They had
is-
enough priests then, of course, that they could let them go off
Loads
and
of priests.
indulge themselves.
They had a great-
Whereas now they'd be like, no, you're saying Mass in Headford.
They had a great old time. And Mom still gives out about how spoiled he must have been by the house.
So what age was your dad at this stage?
Now, he would have been in his early 30s, and Mom was in her late 20s, and they met. And then Dad had to ask Mom, they're going to kill me now for this. Dad had to ask Mom if she'd wait for him, and he had to seek papal dispensation from Rome, which I think took about 2 years. And in the meantime, there were like chaperones and stuff like that. Well, apparently, I don't know. So pretty scandalous, you know, at the time. I would imagine it was a very hard thing to do and to go through, and very brave,
Yeah.
very brave.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm very grateful they did.
Oh,
but-
well, we all are.
Me too.
Yeah, Billy's thrilled.
But yeah, I think it makes, like, he's got great stories. He's got some funny stories.
And Billy, what was tell us about your dad.
My dad, unfortunately, left us when I was about 21, I think. He died then. And he died in November, so Christmas, I suppose, as well.
Same.
Yeah.
Because Aaron was 22, so that's very similar.
Yeah, similar kind of vibes. So, you know, it for the first while, it's a bit of bittersweet, I suppose. But my family, my brother and I especially, have always dealt with dark things like that by making humour out of it. So we have this wonderful Christmas tradition where he has a very accurate sculpture of my dad's head on top of the angel that we put on the Christmas tree at home every year.
It's so weird.
So
and my
it's a-
kids put
I'm
it up.
into that. I think, you know,
Yeah.
if you laugh at things, it makes them less scary.
Absolutely.
And,
The
you know,
angel
easier.
jar. It's
Yeah.
not the angel Gabriel, it's
Yeah,
the angel jar.
the angel jar, and we put it on yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah, I lifted Sive up, my daughter, and she plopped it on the tree in my mom's house, and he was looking down on us.
Well, you know, Christmas, started out as a fully religious festival. Nowadays, it means everything to all different people. But you're now a humanist celebrant, so you're not particularly religious. Well,
No.
you're not religious.
No, I'm not religious. I'm endlessly fascinated by religion, and a lot of the studies that I do is about ancient religions and folk traditions and the modern manifestations of them and all of that. But because I'm so into the idea of ceremony and ritual and learning about it, I wanted to be able to facilitate people. You know, the culture that I am in now, which for a lot of people is a sort of a post-religious society.
Because you're a marriage celebrant and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm a humanist celebrant, so I do legal weddings with the Humanist Association of Ireland.
And burials?
Yeah. You know, humanist funerals and also naming ceremonies for kids.
Oh.
So it's about making meaning and about, you know, having experiences that celebrate life in all of its ways. A wedding is an easy one to celebrate. It's a joyous occasion. You know, a funeral is obviously more difficult, but it's a phenomenal experience to do that, to hold that space and facilitate people in their grief and to send somebody out of this world in a way that is, you know, appropriate to them and respectful of their beliefs, but also to involve the community.
Well, it's probably very Irish of me, but, you know, assuming that there's no, you know, tragedy and it's not a young person, whatever, I love a good funeral.
love a
like
good
if it's a person
funeral.
who's had a good life and
Absolutely.
yeah, it seems like something worth celebrating.
Yeah.
You know,
And
in
the
a
Irish-
way more than being 21.
And
Yeah.
we,
You
do,
know what I mean?
we do funerals right, don't
Yeah,
we?
the
You
Irish
know?
do funerals really well, and it's interesting to be part of the experience of transitioning from a religious-based context for death into something else, and to still keep the meaning of that and the community rowing in behind you, and for people to make, I suppose, the brave decision to have a non-religious funeral. So to be able to take all of the significant elements of that and the meaning of that and to bring it forward in a way that suits the person who doesn't want a religious funeral. The response by the community is phenomenal. No matter what funeral you do, when people are there and they make this very powerful statement, we're with the grieving family, you are part of us, and you know, we stand up to death and we look it in the eyes and we confront it, and we say we're strong and we will endure, and we celebrate
Unlike
the
the
life
poor
of
British.
the person.
Who wait weeks for the
Desperate.
ceremony, and they go back to work in the meantime.
It's so
Yeah.
weird.
And then people sort of say, "Oh, I couldn't go. I didn't know him."
Yeah.
Well, you knew his cousin.
I know.
Yeah. You know,
It's very hard, isn't it? How do
Yeah.
they grieve to wait
Yes, it's
2
very difficult. As an
weeks?
Irish person, I find it's one of the real cultural differences between us and our nearest neighbour.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And it's been extra tough, of course, this year because
Yes.
we don't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funerals and.
Yeah.
I mean, I really, really feel for people who lost someone
Yeah,
this year.
it's
So
hugely
much.
diminishing to not be able to make that statement as a community.
And to get the send-off that you deserve and that people want to give you. You know, we've had a few funerals at home in West Kerry and the community lined the road on each side from the church
the
down.
Ballinrobe is the same. Where my parents.
It's beautiful in its own way.
It's beautiful and lovely. Absolutely, it is. But it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Muireann, are you a humanist or what's your?
I'm a musician.
Nicely answered. Nicely answered.
I don't have any firmly held beliefs really. I believe in people, I believe in nature, I believe in music, I believe in art. I don't know what else there is to believe in, the magic of life. That's kind of where I'm at with things right now, but I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to find out in the end that there was something lovely waiting for
That'd be
me.
great.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Maya, I feel like we could do some music. Now, this song is The Glitter.
It is, yeah.
What's the scale?
So this song, I actually suppose it very much ties in with the theme because I wrote it about trying to find solace or trying to find the magic of life, I guess, when I hadn't felt that in a really long time, and not even knowing that I'd been kind of apathetic or like low level depressed for such a long time, and trying to be like, oh yeah, I used to be like a sparkling person. How do I get that inner sparkle back or something? It's back. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, it doesn't seem like you've lost it. Let's hear it, please.
When Jean changed her world, she became a chorus girl in feathers and sequins and long strings of pearls. But nobody liked the sound of her voice, too thick like molasses, too foreign and cold. Bloomsbury Square, we counted the birds. I said to the magpie, I'm the shiniest girl. We lived out of cafes and bars through the winter. How did we pare the love down to a splinter? Well, Jean, she grew thin, I regret. She's a drinker in our basement room. The storm's just a shiver, but out on the street, the lights hum and flicker. Jean, do you remember how we danced through the glitter? Jean, do you remember how we danced through the glitter? Jean, do you remember how we danced through the glitter? Jean, do you remember how we danced? Good God, you say with a whisper, but no, God is true, and I swear I'm not bitter, but I used to dream of towers and pillars, and I still believe in red neon flickers. Do you think one day, baby, I'll be rich or pretty? Do you think one day, baby, I'll move back to the city? And do you think all the birds still flock to the square? And do you think if I looked, I might find you there?
Beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Standards.
Thank you, Maya.
Great job.
Maya, that song is about Jean Rhys.
Jean Rhys, yeah.
the
Sorry, I
Caribbean.
didn't even mention that. Yeah.
All this, the Wide Sargasso Sea.
Yeah.
In a lot of your songs, you sort of embody other people. Yeah.
I'm continually fascinated by the stories of women who lived in the shadows of like their famous male partners, or, you know, like, I guess Lucia Joyce would actually be a really good example.
Yeah.
But people like that have always really fascinated me. But I'm kind of always writing about myself as well. So,
But when I was reading about your influences, and there was Kate Bush, I can see that, and the storytelling and all that, and Regina Spektor, I can hear that, of course.
Yeah.
Aaron, this year's been a weird one for people who like to be on a stage talking to people. How's your head?
Yeah, do you know what? It's
No complaints.
It's much different now than it was earlier on in the year. It's funny when you were in your opening monologue, and you mentioned that there was a second lockdown. I went, I can't believe there was 2 lockdowns this year. But I think the second lockdown, I think people dealt with it differently. But the first one, you're watching a year's worth of work disappear. And it kind of happened 2 or 3 times this year. So when the second lockdown came, I think we were a bit more prepared for it. And by that stage, I think we, as a people, and certainly the theatre industry and the kind of the entertainment industry, I'm sure the music industry as well, I kind of learned, for the most part, to adapt to that. So a lot of my work this year has actually been putting theatre online. And it's not the same
you've been
thing.
doing the live streaming thing.
Yeah.
But sorry, and I kind of jumped in there, and I think you were about to say exactly what I was about to say. It's just not the same. For the performer especially, I think.
No, it's not. I don't think it's the same for the listeners, but I suppose you have to be resilient about it and kind of still make work and kind of in spite of it all and put stuff out there, because that's been a kind of comfort to me actually this year, is that for the first year I've noticed how much people are talking about how much they need entertainment, how much they need music and theatre and things to watch and things to read. You know, in all my years in doing this, I've always kind of felt a little bit embarrassed about what it is that we do, that we create stuff.
That is so straight boy of you. And I get
It's
it.
true,
I
though,
get
you
it.
know.
There is that thing, that it's not manly enough, or
Yeah,
after the apocalypse, nobody's going to want you.
Absolutely,
You know,
it's frivolous. But I don't feel that this year. I feel like this year that, you know, we've kind of the arts and entertainment industry has really put itself on the map in you know, in how important it is in our lives, and how important it is to have culture and music and literature and theatre and all those things. I'm finding a good comfort in that. That's the positive thing that's come out of it this year for me.
Yeah. It's so woven into our lives that we don't even see it half the time.
Maybe it was taken for granted, I suppose. You know, I think people understand as well how much work goes into creating things now, because in a way they've become more of a part of that, and seeing how we've adapted and had to learn how to make and present work for them now.
Yeah, I don't think people outside of the arts understand how much goes into making something look easy and you know, casual.
Casual,
Yeah.
Look casual, act natural.
It takes me, 2 hours to get this whole no makeup look together. Aaron, you're a proper stage. I mean, I know you've done filming, but you're a stage actor. Even though you originally thought you might be an architect or something,
That's right, yeah.
And then you went to Trinity when you found out you could actually study.
Yeah, I didn't know.
acting.
Yeah, it was the last minute thing. I thought actors were like from a different country. Like my reference for acting was when my dad was watching Glen Rowe on a Sunday evening, and so I was aware of Mick Lally and stuff like that. But I genuinely thought that they were from England or that their parents were actors, but they were this foreign thing. And then I ended up in a play when I was literally just finished school, and took a year out and met some professional actors and realised that you could kind of do it. And but ended up with imposter syndrome for a long
feeling
time.
like a fraud. Because,
Absolutely, yeah. Big, thick country head in me in Trinity. Big, thick, Cavan mumble on me. And, you're in college with people who've been doing this all their lives, really,
With Billy Barry and all of
Absolutely,
that.
yeah, quite literally, yeah.
And you're there with your...
Absolutely, my
Hey.
big clod. Done.
I saw you calling it the acting the shy man's revenge.
I think it is. I would find this actually quite intimidating, or just talking to somebody in general. I've no problem getting up on the stage and, reading lines off. But I'm getting better with talking to people. I've noticed that this year as well, I've found I really want to say hello to the neighbours. I really want to stop and chat to them. And that's another thing I've noticed has changed a lot this year. Where
Well, you also have a ready-made conversation.
absolutely, you
There's
really
something
do,
to talk
yeah.
about. We've all had this.
And you just don't, you don't put the head down and kind of hope that nobody
People
kind of
are
says
so
hello.
honest now, aren't they, with each other?
Yeah.
It's a real how are you. It's not how are you, grand. It's real how are you. Desperate. Me too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's okay to tell them if you're struggling. Like, that's a real
Yes.
thing now.
And there's a real comfort in that as well, isn't there? Yeah.
Billy, the idea of this time of year is a storytelling thing. I mean, what Aaron does on stage is storytelling. And I often describe what I do as being a Shanachie. Now, I know, because to me, I'm just telling people stories from the stage or whatever. And if they're funny, fine, but I don't feel any pressure that they have to be.
Yeah.
So all songs are telling some kind of story. It may be simple, it may be complicated, It may be a story. It may be Patricia the Stripper, which has a lot of layers. Or it may be just I love you. But it's still a story. And this time of year is meant to be the storytelling time. Why is that?
Well,
Mr. Folklore.
There's an expression in Irish about storytelling is "Ó Hoghan go bealtaine," which is from Halloween to the 1st of May. That was the storytelling season. And the big stories, the international folktales, the Fíneocht, they would only be told really at this time. There was a practical reason to it, but also there was an idea about...
What was the practical reason?
The practical reason was, the nights are dark and people, they're not out working late, so they sit in by the fire. They gather round, and in the absence of other outlets for entertainment, this is what people did. But this time of year, this dark time, stories were a way for people to escape. They were a way for people to entertain. But also what you find in a lot of the traditional stories as well is so much of the mores, so much of the metaphorical understanding of the world which is communicated in these stories. So you take stories on their level, on their superficial level, like Patricia the Stripper or like a fairy legend or whatever, and it seems frivolous on the surface, but when you dig into it and when the storyteller and the listener understand what's really being said, you're communicating in such a more meaningful way. And, I think actually this whole experience that we're all going through has disrupted our narrative in a really profound way. And a lot of people are sort of reeling and wondering what it is that we do, what it is, who we are, and what's our new narrative. We've been sort of knocked sideways out of our story. John Moriarty, the Irish philosopher, he spoke about this existential anguish he had about falling out of his story. And I've experienced a bit of that myself as well. And I think a lot of people are. We had a lot of sense of taking things for granted. We had a lot of security. And the narratives as a performing art, as a song, podcasting, all of these things have really come to the fore in terms of trying to deal with it, creating new narratives, interpreting things in real time and trying to sort of get that foundation back under us.
I can identify with that sort of falling out of the story thing. I mean, if you can't do the thing that you've always centered in your life, then who are you? And I have always fought with people about this thing. Sometimes people would dismiss me and say, oh, you're hiding behind that, all of this, the makeup and all that. But I always say to them, I'm not. It's magnifying me. It's making me more readable. And you said something similar, that masks allow you to lose yourself in the group.
I think so. I mean, what people have been missing so much is the coming together and this swelling of culture, be it at sport events, be it at religious ceremonies, be it at the kind of ceremonies and festivals that we do in the summer, even going to Electric Picnic. And the idea of standing at the main stage and shouting out lyrics together in this huge upswelling of human culture, you surrender to this bigger thing. And in that surrender, you become more than yourself, and masks are a wonderful way of doing that in hiding the kind of face you prepare to meet the people that you meet. This idea that when you lose your sense of identity, there's a truth and there's an inner freedom that surges forth. And we have all our usual sort of structures and relationships with each other, which are negotiated through the humdrum of life. But when we come together in this way, and sometimes anonymizing yourself brings out an inner truth that is profound. And it's healing, and it's so life-affirming. Yeah, it's so liberating.
There's a wonderful tradition at home in West Kerry and in other parts of the country as well, the day after Christmas Day, to go out in the Ran.
Yeah,
and that's when we all put on a
yeah.
mask and all hell breaks loose in Dingle anyway, that's for sure.
It's hugely life-affirming, and we are diminished at the moment. And I think for a lot of creative people, we're doing our best, but it feels like placeholders for the real thing. And the real thing is coming, and it's coming back, and we're doing our best. But for me, it feels like life is in black and white at the moment, and it's about to burst into colour.
I mean, I so identify it, even down to like taking the kind of the creative stuff out of it, just being on a dance floor with other people and all dancing to the same song, and the next song comes on and you all love it, and there's that kind of thing happens. And I don't like seeing people trashing young people for hanging out in the streets. It's
human nature.
Yeah, it's what we do. And
It's what we are.
I think young people have given up so much.
Oh my goodness, they've been wonderful, really. And it's harder for them. God, imagine your first year in college and this happening.
Yeah. Sounds like some time for some music, and Willem, you're going to oblige. Now, this song comes from your dad.
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Everybody's dad is getting a mention.
Yeah, up the dads. This is a song from the Great Blasket Island. And the island behind that, actually, Inishvikalon. There was a family living there called Muintir Irálig. And when I was a little girl in Dunquin, a lot of the islanders who were moved off the island onto the mainland were still alive. And so I learned music from them. I heard stories from them. I kind of caught the end of that old way of life. And Dad would have played a lot with them. Dad's a fiddler. And so he taught me this tune. It's called Pertnabuki, which means the fairy tune or the fairy song. But what's interesting about the way we're going to do it, I suppose, is that we're going to sing it, and the lyrics were given to my father by a Blasket fiddler whose family were attributed to this piece of music. So the story of the tune is about a fisherman. Apparently he was out on the sea one night and he heard this music coming to him on the wind, and he was so transported and transfixed by it that when he got home, he took out his fiddle and he played until he was able to reproduce what he had heard on the wind. And that piece of music was called Pertnabuki, or the fairy tune. But the lyrics then that go along with it, they give so much more imagery and meaning to the story for me, because it tells the story of a woman who's been captured by the fairies. And she can come home to the real world and see, her family at night when everyone is asleep. But then as soon as the cock crows, she has to return into the fairy fort. And she said she'll be crying as long as there is water in the wave, and to never mess with the fairy fort or with the fairy folk, because good things don't come from it. So it's just amazing to get that extra bit to the story as well. Billy's going to play a really weird instrument here.
Yes. Now we're going to talk about this instrument after the song, really, but just to lay the groundwork here. Billy is a huge nerd.
Correct.
And in a fabulous way, though. I do love nerdy people who get into their thing. You recreate prehistoric instruments and then play them.
Yes, I do.
Like, that is very niche. That is as niche as it gets. The instrument you're going to play during the song, which we'll talk about afterwards, is not prehistoric.
No.
It is cutting edge, modern in a way, but just to toe up for listeners, it's made of nothing but wood and a bit of wire. There's no electronics involved at all. It is totally just a string instrument.
It's called a yebahar.
A yebahar, which was invented in Turkey by a Turkish musician a couple of years ago. So I want listeners to bear in mind, this is entirely acoustic. And to prove it, you can go onto the website pantasocracy.ie and look at the videos of this performance. And the thing that looks like a plough is the thing making the sound. Let's hear it, Pertnabuki.
Some Selsa ach glegan klach is katzafen ut fenlis ishtach nit hane blame akalt ut fein is vuelen ansalza kahe gemacht das ach betsa queen not vegish kasutrin is not denig any leschen drum hier salam.
That, the instrument, the Yabahar. It's so perfect with that song, isn't it?
It was just like made for it.
Yeah,
So
otherworldly, spooky.
Yeah, and some people think with that tune that maybe it was whale song he heard reverberating against the canvas of the Nave Og or something. So it's just, it was perfect for us, kind of watery as well. And yeah, well done, babe.
If you're listening in Radioland, you can go to pantasarctics.ie, as I mentioned. You describe it, Billy, because I don't even know where to start. I mean, it has Bowron stuck on the end of it.
It's a very simple fretboard with two strings, and they're cello strings, and it's the same length as a cello neck, just because that's something that works. But attached to the two strings are two huge long springs, which was actually originally one long spring, and it's used by physics teachers to teach kids about waves. So you bang it and you watch the wave moving up and down the spring. So I clipped that in half and I made it into two 2-meter long springs. So they are hooked onto the strings, so when you play a note or when you pluck it, the sound goes up and down the spring, and that's where you get the wonderful reverb sound. And then, because the spring is not going to make much noise on its own, they're connected to two drums, which are like speakers. So there's these big membranes which are making the sound loud. So really, it's a very simple setup, fully acoustic, but it has this very electronic sound. People say it kind of sounds ancient and futuristic at the same time, which is a strange kind of contradiction, but that's what I loved about the sound when I heard it. So the inventor, Gorkem Shen, very generously wrote back to me and said for me that I was allowed to make a
Well,
version.
I suspect he wasn't inundated with requests.
I can't imagine Lidl will be doing them in the centre aisle anytime soon.
Well, when I, occasionally I thought, I should learn an instrument, probably whatever. I was thinking, I would want to, learn the mouth organ or something that I could carry around easily, because you want to be able to pull it out, on the train to attract audience, whatever. You're clearly not that person, Billy. You're also one of the only people who can play Irish Bronze Age horns. And what's that all about?
Okay, what is that all about? Before I studied archaeology, I briefly went to art college. So I had this idea that I like making things, but it didn't work out, and I left art college, and then I went and studied archaeology and folklore. And then I also like music. So a great way of making things, playing music, and archaeology is to look at ancient instruments, to reproduce them and to play them, to see what they sound like. So it's basically just marrying together three of my interests.
Well, that's how I ended up where I am. So, yeah. Maya, you're moving to Cove. What's that about?
I am. It's a residency. I'm going to be spending 2 months making some kind of work.
Are you working towards another album, or?
I am, yeah. I'm actually planning to record some of it while I'm down there. I take a really long time to do things, so God knows when it'll be done. But
Well, 2020 gave you all the time in the world.
Exactly.
Well, so Maya, let's hear your last song you're going to do for us. Tell us about this
So
song.
this is a really ancient song.
The trees,
The
they
trees.
do grow
The
tall.
version that I sing is called "The Trees They Do Grow High." I first heard it from my friend Rady Pete, who sings with Lancome. It's from the 1600s, but like quite likely older. It's very dark and strange, but I'm always, for some reason, drawn to the weirder folk songs, and
Joy, your emo roots are always going to show.
they really
Well, let's hear it, please.
Trees, they do grow high, and the leaves, they do grow green. It's many a cold winter night my love and I have seen. On a cold winter night, my love, you and I alone have been. Oh, my Barney boy is young, but he's growing. Growing, my Barney boy is young, but he's growing. Father, dear Father, you've done to me much harm, to go and get me married to one who is so young. For he is only 16 years and I am 21. Oh, my Barney boy is young, but he's growing. Growing, my Barney boy is young, but he's growing. And at the age of 16 he was a married man, and at the age of 17 a father to a son. And at the age of 18, the grass grew over him. Cruel death soon put an end to his growing. Growing, cruel death soon put an end to his growing. And now my love is dead, and in his grave doth lie the watch over him so very, very high. And I will sit and mourn his death until the day I die. I'll watch over his child as he's growing. Growing, I'll watch over his child as he's growing.
Aaron, you've been performing, streaming a Christmas Carol all December
Yes, yeah.
with Brian Burrows. Is
Brian
it?
Burrows is a good friend of mine, and we adapted it about 10 years ago for a two-hander, sort of physical comedy storytelling version of it for families and for kids. And we put it together because a friend of mine in Cavan had a little theatre upstairs in a pub that he was closing down, and he said, "Will you do this before we close down?" And we did, and we've been doing it every year since. And this year we decided to do it again, and because theatres are closed, we recorded it and put it online. So yeah, I'm a bit obsessed with the story. So
Yeah, you love it. You think it encapsulates all that's good and lovely about Christmas.
the thing that struck me as a kid with the transformative idea of Scrooge was that, you know, he was afraid of death. He was afraid, you know, and Ghost of Christmas Future shows him that he's going to die unloved, and he redeems himself. But actually, when I read the book years later, I started to see this change in him happening much earlier, and then just messages that kind of through the book about the idea of that good feeling and the feeling of goodwill and generosity that we feel at Christmas. Dickens kind of encourages us to do that all year round and keep that feeling and message throughout the year. And that really just struck a chord with me a long time ago. And that's the message that I try to put into the thing, is the idea that I try to carry around with me all the year. It's not easy, but... You know.
Oh, God bless you, everyone.
Everyone.
I think you maybe you just identify with Tiny Tim.
I do a little.
because you're not a huge man.
No, I'm diminutive.
Yeah. That's a beautiful note to end on, Aaron. Thank you very much for that. You really are the spirit of Christmas. Oh. And so, William, you are going to sing us out with a song that, in a way, probably needs no introduction. It's a classic, beautiful... Well, it's not a Christmas song, but it certainly works as one.
It works as one, and I think it's one that's used very often to mark an occasion or the end of an evening, especially as well. And
The parting glass.
it's been lovely to be in all of your company. Thank
It's
you
been
so
lovely
much
to
for a
be in all of
really
yours.
gorgeous evening.
Yeah, it's been lovely.
It's lovely.
Let's do this every Christmas. Mirren and Billy, do your thing.
Oh, all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. If I had that sorely has my heart beguiled. Her rosy cheeks and ruby lips I own, she has my heart in thrall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Oh, all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they are sorry for my going away. And all the comrades that e'er I had, they'd wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and I'll softly call. Good night and joy be with you all. Iva Nolikana.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Lovely.
And that's our parting glass too. My thanks to Muireann, Billy, Maya and Aaron for sharing their stories and songs with me tonight. Thanks also to Doireann for letting us set up temporary camp here in the beautiful surroundings of the James Joyce Centre. That's all from us, from Pantasocracy for 2020. And like all of you, I am hoping that we can get together next year without the masks, the hand washing and the barge poles between us. Head to pantasocracy.ie if you want to see how beautiful and Christmassy we all look. And well, have yourself a merry little Christmas. Thanks for listening and hope we can all connect and hug in 2021. Good night. It's been a pleasure.